Anyway, that night I spiked a fever and was put into the hospital. And funny story, in the midst of this unimaginable, Elise and I are in the hospital. They do the scan, and it is just this lacework of lymphoma and bone. They were kind enough to show us the scan, and it was just kind of nightmarish, and a lot of it is muted in my mind because I guess the night of the second day, I'd been there 24 hours, and an ambulance came and transported me from Spartanburg to Charleston, and it got there about 10 o'clock that night, and the doctor gave me a cocktail that made sure I traveled comfortably. I was high as a kite, so I'm in the back of the ambulance. Elise is in the front. God bless her, talking to the ambulance guy the whole way down, and so apparently, I had been given the drugs to make me just happy as can be, and the cell phone rings, and the ambulance guy says, "Do you want me?" It was not on my robe, actually, the hospital gown, and so he said, "Do you want me to hand this to you?" And I said, "Sure." And I pick it up, and Reverend Barrett, this is Bishop Holston, whom I had not yet met, who had been come to our conference just a couple months before. And I have no idea what I said to Bishop Holston, but it was a whale of a conversation. I was just talking out of my head, and I've often wondered what his impression of me. I'm in an ambulance going down the highway. Woo, we're going fast. Just all kinds of stupid stuff. I don't think I said anything, to exclude me from ministry. He didn't kick me out, but it was just, when I found out the next morning that had happened, I was just like, Bishop Holston called? Oh, what did I say? That initiated a process that led eventually to this amazing feat of science, which and it's part art and part science. But they located a donor who was a perfect 10 out of 10 match, which is 10 markers that they look at, and that person matched up ideally for me, and there are several other things they look at that they check the boxes for, and so they have to synchronize a process over continents and spans of time, and so they are receiving 2 weeks before they're going to receive the donor's marrow. They begin you on a preparation regimen that will essentially take you to the brink, and you will receive the cells after you have been well weakened. I had at first a radioactive product that was intravenous, and as the woman's putting it in, she says, "Well, here's your BMW. It's a $64,000 injection, and so it has a monoclonal antibody that is attached to iodine, a radioactive element, and so for the 5 days following, I am literally radioactive, and I can't be nearer than 2 feet to a person. I have to wash my hands multiple times a day, take 4 showers a day. The clothes I wear and the things have to be washed separately from anything else. I have to wear gloves even to use my iPad or the remote. My iPad had to be in a plastic bag because I sweat radioactivity. So that was intense, and that was doing its work on the cancer, and then there were 2 weeks of chemotherapy after that. And so, toward the end of the chemotherapy regimen, the person in Europe, presumably, gave their cells over 2 days, and the second day they were attached to a courier's wrist and flown over to correspond to the date that I was finishing my preparation regimen. And they get to the hospital sometime in the middle of the night, and by 10 that next morning they have tested it for any number of things. And so if it has a fungal problem, they'll give it to you with antifungals, and if it has bacteria in it, they will give it to you with antibiotics. So they've covered all the bases and made sure it was as safe as it could possibly be to give to you, and then they transfuse it over a couple of hours, just like a blood transfusion, but it's someone else's stem cells from their marrow. And this remarkable gift just happened, and it was didn't just happen, but it was orchestrated and pulled off, and it was kind of this extraordinary thing to be a part of and to receive, and with it we received so many blessings of encouragement and gift cards and monetary contributions to the medical stuff, and so all those things were this kind of undergirding of providence in the midst of our need, and that's so kind of was just recovering from that and gathering steam and getting my footing as the pastor at St. James, and they were enormously receptive and just gracious, and as a community did so many things, and in the Spartanburg community the same can be said of them. And in the midst of that, we were figuring out what it meant to live life after my death in so many ways, and so all the patterns and practices you've established over your lifetime kind of get reconfigured, and we were figuring out what it meant for our marriage and for our family, and kind of just felt like we were possibly hitting a stride, and I had developed some mysterious symptoms that ultimately went undiagnosed for months and months as they did test after test after test, and the simplest decision in the end was made to try what hadn't been indicated completely, but could be one of the solutions, and it was the simplest thing, which was it was a graft versus host process. The marrow was messing with my system in a way that was shutting my system down, as well as making inroads against the lymphoma. And so once they addressed that, I thought, wow, we're finally there. And of course, I was on a very high steroid regimen, and I was getting stuff done. It was just amazing. I was just, I lost 20 pounds as soon as I started prednisone. Was playing with the kids outside and getting stuff done at church and staying up till midnight and just, having this unbelievable time. I was like, yes, this is what all the stuff has been for. And kind of all came crashing down when scans revealed that the lymphoma had returned, and once that happens, they've used their magic bullet, and it was that was early in February February of 2015, and we had decisions to make. I could no longer ask of the church what they had generously and without question provided, but they were ready, and I was ready to pass leadership to somebody else, and we had done good things, and it was really good season at that church, I think, and you played a big role in that by reminding me in a phone call about I'll never forget, as I panicked with my transplant coming up, in a phone conversation you said something that just changed the course of my ability to deal with it, in saying that both you and the congregation will come out of this stronger, and that proved to be true in many ways. Not without our scars and not without our limps and all the rest of it, but we did emerge from that transformed in ways that God manages to do. When I just am reminded again and again of why we need each other to both be serious about stuff and to laugh about things, and that's the part that's just the joy in the midst of it all. Like I've covered this long dramatic span of events, and in a lot of ways not once laughed, but there were so many things to laugh about and to laugh along with that. Tragedy gets transformed into comedy, but it's not ever how you predict, and that's what makes it funny. The process of all that has been enormously rich and growth-filled, and oddly enough, something I can't do it differently, but I nor would I want to be a human being that hadn't learned what I've learned in the midst of it. So it's just that's the way trials are, and suffering makes sense, not in and of itself, but for the ways that sort of this green lace of hope wraps itself around whatever weeds are choking out everything else. I've been just blown away by all the things that you can think of, the joy in the midst of sorrow, light in the midst of darkness, the kind of hope in the midst of despair, all those contrasting experiences, but held together in a way that each enhances the truth and reality of the other, and so not that I'm eager to repeat it, but having lived through it, as a wise person once told me, the only way out is through, and so just continuing to put one foot in front of the other and follow as long as we can follow, and recognize that, like other people have said, when our grip fails, God's holds fast, and that has proven to be true. We are held, and so that's a little bit about the journey to here. So in April of 2015, we concluded my time, and I preached my last sermon on Easter Sunday, and we moved the following week to New Palestine, Indiana, and have found here a community of really, really strength and encouragement and kindness at the Lutheran Church, and the pastors there, pastors to us and colleagues and friends, and the community there has lent their support, and they've allowed me to preach once and to lead a book group, and so the things we've been able to do here in Indiana have allowed the children to have a place of stability, because they're going to have a lot of other variables to deal with, and so being in one place in a house that's ours and a community that's theirs and will be it brings me great joy to have made that decision, and it was the right decision, and it is. I've actually enjoyed Indiana. There are a lot of things. Obviously, I'm not downplaying the things I miss about South Carolina and the friendships and but the ones that have mattered have sustained themselves over time and space, and that's true always. And so the experience of being in a new place and not having pastoral responsibilities, at least formal ones, has been life-giving during this season, and good days and bad days. But as the house husband and father now, it's really a role I enjoy. I'm not able to fulfill every part of the role, but the ones I do offer, I can do gladly and well. And
what matters? At this point in life, you're able to delineate what seems to matter from what matters. Ways that some of us haven't reflected on.
Yeah, I think love, in the sense of its fullness and its self-emptying nature, and I think in the midst of ministry, you pour out a lot, and one of the aha moments early on might have even been before we moved here. Greg Boyd talks about how kenosis, Philippians 2:5-11, which has always been the passage toward which I gravitate, has been, have this mind among yourselves, which is in Christ Jesus, who, though he was equal with God, did not count equality with God something to be grasped, but poured himself out. And that image of the pitcher and servant being poured out has been a real touch point for me, in a place where the gospel made sense. And the thing Boyd points out that he might not be the first to do, but what differentiates between us from Jesus is that Colossians also says that in Jesus the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and so the fullness from which Jesus is emptying never exhausts itself, versus the kind of what the trap we can get into is that the self-emptying becomes its own in service to itself, and in order to be the people we think we're created to be, it is out of our own resources that we are pouring sometimes. And obviously this is not universally true, but in my case it registered that when we get empty, the emptying becomes a means of filling ourselves versus having something to pour out. And so that internal work of coming to know myself and my relationship with God and my relationship with others in the context of a fullness that I don't have to sustain is maybe the biggest marker of this season for me. Being as receptive as I am offering, and it is counterintuitive in a way, because it feels to a person who's reared to be selfless, it feels it is allowing God to be God for us in a way that that restores us truly to who God is creating us and recreating us to be, and all that is so abstract in a way, but it's become real during this season, and so stillness, time alone, reflective thinking and writing. It's not something I'm constantly still good at, but it is something I now understand as not an add-on, but a essential part of just being human and being growing towards deeper understandings. And honestly, the other piece of it is relinquishing is a great deal easier. I think I referenced to someone who was approaching dying with great fear, and said, "I've never died before." And in the Christian tradition, that the deaths that happen, recognizing them as such, and doing what Stanley Hauerwas says, history is defined not by cause and effect, but by death and resurrection. And so the relinquishments I made to this point of vocation and location and the sense of self you create, that's been helped a lot by Richard Rohr and his sort of, and it's borrows from Jungian psychology, but we sort of build these external, the first part of life is building these external shells of what we believe we're supposed to be, and the remainder of our lives is filling the contents of that shell and recognizing that the structures we put in place were necessary, and that's what you've got to do in order to and there's a certain, in saying it out loud, you kind of you run the risk of saying arrogantly that, well, now that I've got it figured out, and it's not that at all, so much as none of us has as much figured out as we think at first, and so that gives you great permission to let go of things that you thought had defined you from the earliest time you can remember, and whether that's defining yourself as a brainiac or a nerd or a man about town or whatever it is, the kind of structure that was put in place is not a permanent thing, and you're being remade into something from the inside out. And I mean, that literally happened physically for me, and it has happened not once, but more times than I can count, spiritually. And what it does is creates an environment where, and my wife was the first to say these words to me, but they registered, where we're freer than we can ever imagine and more bound than we can ever understand. And both of those things can be true. But, as I told someone, if you had said 5 years ago to me, in 5 years you will be out of the ministry and you'll be married to a woman who is becoming Catholic and you'll be living in Indiana, I would have said, what? And yet the boundness of our situation and the freedom within that boundness to go where we have gone and come where we've come and make the decisions we've made is kind of extraordinary. And I just think it's an amazing testimony to the unpredictability of God and life and our own ability within the strictures and structures to make decisions that are life-giving, life-affirming, and death-acknowledging. So the process of relinquishment has grief, and it has oddly enough gain, and that's what now when I, for instance, get angry about something, my first move generally is to ask the question, what is it in me that is making that happen? And that's a step that wasn't my first impulse before. And obviously that's you can be too reflective and sort of lost in your own stuff all the time. But what I have discovered counterintuitively is that it makes me engaged in ways that matter to me, whether it's tuning out the noise of whatever else there is and concentrating on the child in front of me, or it is a kind of settledness within me that allows me to be present to these just sheerly wonderful experiences that sometimes blow you away, and you kind of just reside in that, and you take that in and appreciate it in that moment for what it is, in ways that obviously when you're concentrating on all the things around your work and your job and your livelihood, but also your spiritual, and